Hi everyone. We're going to get started in just a couple minutes. Okay. I wanted to give it a couple minutes just to see if anyone else was joining, but can you all hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, great. So, first and foremost, I want to thank you guys all for taking some time on a Thursday evening to join us for this. We hope that it's informational and that you get a lot out of it. If you have questions, please enter them in the chat. When we're finished, we will have time for any Q&A. So, just jot down your questions or type them in the chat as we're going, and then we'll make sure to answer everything for you. So, my name is Desiree Lowe, And joining us this evening is Steve Colvin. Steve Colvin is a real estate partner that I work with and have been working with for many years. And he covers all of Orange County and even the surrounding counties. So we're really excited to present this opportunity. And we're also going to go over not just the Dream for All, but we're going to touch on some other first-time buyer programs just to kind of give you an idea of how they differ, because some might be better for some people, and this may work great for others. So let's get started. So the agenda, we're going to just introduce ourselves and kind of give you our background so that you know that you're talking to someone who knows what they're talking about. We're going to talk about the current market and the trends, the whole process of home buying in general, what it takes to get approved for a loan. Uh, we're going to touch briefly, like I mentioned, on the programs. And then, of course, the big finale is going to be about the Dream for All, which I know you guys are all here to learn a little more about. So a little bit about me. Um, my name is Desiree Lowe. I run the Lowe team at Supreme Lending. I've been doing mortgages for over 20 years, and I love the company that I've been with. I've been here for about 10 years. And on the right-hand side, I won't bore you with all of the statistics, but on the right-hand side, you can see a picture of my team. Um, my processor, my operations manager, my underwriter, and then of course my chief happiness officer down there on the ground. So that's a little bit about me. I am a top 1% mortgage originator. And I don't say that to brag. I say that so that you know that you're talking to someone who knows what they're doing. And I have a lot of experience and I've done a lot of purchases. So I really love working with first-time buyers. I have a passion for helping people get into homes and actually educating them along the way. So that's a little bit about me. Now let
Hi,
Steve
everybody.
introduce himself.
I'm Steve Colvin. I'm a real estate broker. I've been in real estate since 1993. Um, I met Desiree right around 2000. We worked at the same company for a while. Actually, brought her into the mortgage world. Um, I got my broker's license in 2017 and officer license of real estate, and I've been running a small boutique real estate company since then. I'm not going to bore you with all this. You can read it. I consider myself an expert in this field. So we can go to the next slide. There you go.
Okay.
Is now a good time to buy? Yeah, I think any time is a good time to buy. I know that over the last 5 years and really over the last 10 years, everybody's been kind of holding, waiting for values to come down. And the rates kind of flipped on us and started going up. Rental rates, which we'll go over a little bit later, continue to climb. Actually, the rental rates have been up about 45% just in the last 5 years. Um, and I think right now is a great time to buy. There's a lot of programs that Desiree is going to be going over. Um, there's nothing to indicate that we're having any kind of depreciation in the foreseeable future. Go to the next slide. This is a pretty powerful stat here to see. On the left, you have month over month, which is January versus December. We don't have February's numbers yet. And then on the right, you have year over year production. And this is January 2026 versus January 2025. And kind of the troubling stat in this is the new listings. If you see that the new listings are down 17% over this time last year, and it's about 1 out of 4 houses that are not there that we had this time last year. In addition, the average price from January to January is up 8%, and we've been seeing this trend almost year over year for literally the last 10 years. It's been crazy what we've seen. The one new listing on the left hand side, if you look at new listings up 73, That's people holding off on selling their homes in December because it's a holiday month, and then come January, a bunch of new listings hit. But overall, we're still down, the 17%. So it's low inventory has been our issue for a while, and it just continues to be our issue.
Next slide.
Yeah. This is just a graph on rents. I'm sure that a majority of you on this call probably have rented at some point if you're not renting now. And the most frustrating thing, because I rented as well, is every single year or every other year you get these rate hikes. And they just California, depending on what type of property you're in, there's an unlimited rent hike that can happen if you are part of the Tenant Protection Act, which is based upon the property type and the owner type. You could be maxed at 5% plus inflation, which would be somewhere between 5 and 10%. But it's just been, this graph just goes up, and it's going to continue to go up. This is another thing that we've had, just increases in this, and unlike the housing market that did crash in the late 2000, in the 2008, 2009, 2010, the rental market never cracked during that time. It just continued to move up as people, when they were not buying, they were renting. So it's putting more pressure on the market. But this is just going to continue to go up, unfortunately. And this stat is on 3 bedroom houses only. If you were to look at the 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom market, it's pretty comparable. You can move to the next one. There you go. Yeah, home price is the same thing, kind of matches the rent graph. Orange County. I'm assuming most of us are on this call are in Orange County. It's just a place that everybody wants to be. And overall, California is a losing population as a whole, but Orange County is not. We're gaining, and we just don't have new builds happening. We have like 2 to 3 different areas that new builds are happening, and it's just at a very low volume. So it just puts a lot of pressure on the market, and that's why we have um, the real estate appreciation moving up and the rental appreciation moving up. And there have been some things on social media, maybe some of you have seen, where it's more on a national basis, where they're talking about how there's finally more home sellers than home buyers, and that should give buyers an opportunity. And I think nationally that is true. There's some areas like Texas and Florida, primarily, that are just getting hammered. They're in a massive depreciation. They overbuilt both areas. Um, but when you come into Orange County or Southern California, that's just not happening here. It's a completely different thing. You can move to the next slide. I don't know, Desiree, you want to do this one?
Sure. So this slide, it's interesting. We're just going to do kind of a high level view. So this is basically showing you the benefits of buying now. Um, I'm sure you guys have heard people say, "Oh, I'm waiting for the rates to drop to buy." That's kind of a common um, reason people are waiting. And this shows you, and actually, because rates have been going down, finally. This is not actually 100% accurate. And I like to do things a little high on purpose just to kind of give you, a conservative number. But if you look all the way here to the right, it shows you that the current interest rate is 6.99, and that's actually not true. As of today, it's in the low sixes. So, and then it gives you an example. If you bought today at 6.99, let's just say that's the rate. Same premise would apply if you were buying at 6.25 and waiting for it to drop to 5.25. So future rate is 5.99 with a 20% down payment. So at the end of buying now, even with your cost of refinancing later and other repairs that you would be paying for, for owning a home, you would actually be in the positive by $50,344 by buying now versus buying later. And one thing that people don't, always consider, because if you buy the house now, in very simple terms, you buy the house now, you pay 6.99, let's just say that's the rate. Then that's the price that you got. You locked that in. So when you go to refi, you're refining off of the price that you paid versus if you wait and you buy in a year, you're probably going to pay a higher price because as rates go down, it drives the prices up. And so that equity that you would have already been sitting on, you're actually just paying more for the house. I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Our mortgage rate's high. So we've all heard the um, stories from our grandparents about how they used to walk 5 miles in the snow one way to school and all those kinds of funny stories, right? You know, we have it good. Um, I think it's interesting to look at this. So this is a data from Freddie Mac. You might have heard about Freddie Mac, Fannie and Freddie. They're basically where all conventional loans come from. They insure those loans. So since 1971 until 2025, the average rate was 7.71%. And that's taking into consideration the really high rates that went up in the 80s and the really low rates that we saw during the pandemic. And the average rate is still 7.71. So we are actually far below that right now, because as I mentioned, we're easily, depending on the program, we're in the low sixes, sometimes high fives. So we are lower than the average. So I think it's good to have that perspective. So the home buying process, first thing you would do after you finish this webinar is you would reach out to a loan officer. At the end of this, I'm going to give you an opportunity to book on my calendar. And you can reach out if you don't know your schedule now, you can always reach out later and we can schedule something. And we're going to get you pre-approved for a mortgage. So one of the things that I do up front, a lot of times people are, you know, especially if you haven't done this before, or if you're just not sure when you're going to buy, you don't always want to do a hard credit pull, right? So I start with a soft credit check. That way, if you don't buy for 6 months, a year, or however long it takes, we're not doing anything to your credit. We wait until you actually go into contract. Then you're going to work with the real estate agent. So in this case, Steve would take you out and show you the homes, take you to as many homes as you want to see so you can get perspective. And you're going to find your dream home, hopefully. And then you're going to make an offer on the home. Steve would actually write that up, help you negotiate that. And you're going to go through several things when you write an offer. It's not like you write an offer and you're done. There's a whole process. You go through mortgage underwriting, which is me. And then you're also going to go through a home inspection, which Steve would help you order. We're going to talk about that a little bit further down the road, and appraisal, and then eventually you'd close the deal. So what we strive to do, I can tell you from both of our perspectives, is we try to make it as smooth and easy as possible, as fun as a mortgage could possibly be. So I'll let Steve take over. We're just going to talk about some mistakes. So go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, so the first mistake that you could potentially get yourself into when you're looking at homes is using the listing agent to buy the home. And why that is that when a listing agent takes on a buyer, and they also have the seller, they're in a dual role, and that dual role is a tough position to be in, to give the seller and the buyer the exact service. 95% of all listings, the listing agent and the seller have already had a relationship of some sort, whether it's a relative, a friend, it might even be a referral from somebody that they know. And so because of that, they're never going to be able to give you the same service that they give that other person, right? And this is really where you need your own advocate, your own person to negotiate on your behalf. So I would strongly urge whoever you use as an agent, a buyer's agent, to get your own agent, get your own advocate, somebody on your side. You're going to save money. You're going to push the seller into uncomfortable situations where they'll need to make a decision that will benefit you. And it's just better that you have your own agent in the process. I'd also say that a majority of the lawsuits that happen in real estate happen on dual agency products, where one, usually the buyer didn't get all the information, wasn't properly disclosed, found out a bunch of problems, and then and then later wanted to pursue action. So get your own agent. You can go to the next slide. Buyer broker agreement. So any house that you buy, whether you go through the listing agent or a buyer's agent, there's a new agreement that needs to be signed by the buyer and then whatever brokerage they use. And this is all part of the real estate lawsuit that happened a few years ago. So there are two different types of agreements you can sign. One is an exclusive agreement, and then one is a non-exclusive agreement. The exclusive agreement, if you sign that, these agreements are always based on 90 days. Just remember that, always 90, can't be any longer. Is means that if you sign an exclusive and that agent shows you properties and you go out on your own and you find a property somewhere else, you're still obligated to pay the agent that maybe didn't even show you that home, right? Because it's an exclusive deal. Or if you sign an exclusive contract with an agent and they're just never available for you, they're always out on the weekends busy, they can't show you properties, you're stuck with them for that 90-day period on an exclusive agreement. And the general agreements are around 2.5%. So the 2.5% is 2.5% of the purchase price, right? So if you do a non-exclusive agreement, which is what I would recommend, it's the only ones that I sign. It means you would work with an agent on a non-exclusive basis. If that agent shows you a property that you then make an offer on, then that is the house that you would then be obligated to pay that agent. But it also gives you the freedom to potentially work with a different agent, maybe in a different area, right? Maybe you want to look at property in Oceanside and you feel more comfortable of having an agent in Oceanside, whereas you want to look at property in Huntington Beach and you want to use an agent in Huntington Beach. That's the importance of having a non-exclusive, so you have the freedom to do that. Now, the 2.5% or whatever the broker, whatever that agreement comes out to, um, in the offer, we ask the seller to cover that commission, and that's kind of the difference of what it is now versus what it was 5 years ago. So part of the offer is that here's my price, here's my contingency periods, and then oh by the way, we want you to cover our buyer broker fee. And so 100% of the time the seller does it. It might not always match the 2.5. It might be a little bit lower, but I've never had one not do it. So it's just important you know this buyer broker agreement. Technically, this is supposed to be signed before you even look at a home, but I know that there's a ton of agents and brokers that are not doing that. It absolutely has to be included with the offer. It just has to. It's part of the contract. So if you have any questions about this buyer broker agreement, or earlier we talked a little bit about the market and where the market's going, my information will be at the end of this, and you can call me anytime or text me or whatever, and we can have a short conversation on it. Yeah, choosing the right property. I mean, this is always important. You know, where is it located? What kind of things are around the property that you would need to be aware of, whether it be a train track, whether it be auto shop, things like that. We had a lot of refineries in certain areas of Orange County over the years. Those refineries are gone, but the refineries were there at one point, and that ground is damaged in some of those areas. And it's just sometimes important to know where your property lies, and within that, there's disclosures within the contract that'll help you navigate through that. And of course, I would help you navigate through that, and hopefully, whatever if it's not me, whatever realtor you have would also help you. Um, Location, size, property type, um, all these things are important. Functional obsolescence, it's a big word, but agents can help you with that. These are things that on a resale a deal could hurt you if you buy a home and if it's a perfect home, then you want to sell it later. But you have these issues that you didn't really notice when you bought it. These are all things that you'd want to have some advice on. So if you look at the slide, structural issues, water damage, outdated electrical, plumbing. If the property is overpriced, there are properties, you guys probably see them all the time. They're severely overpriced, and they'll sit a little bit. You'll see the property value drop, a lower price, and then eventually they'll hit the sweet spot, and then the house is gone. Homes that are priced right generally are all selling. So this is another thing. If you had any questions about these things, you can let me know. You can go to the next slide because I think I'm going to touch on some of
Okay.
this on the home inspection. Um, yeah, the offer process. So, I think one of the biggest things in an offer, obviously, is the value that you want to pay or the price that you want to pay. But there's other things in an offer that might be important to the seller outside of price. And these things could consist of escrow term, contingency periods for your loan, for your appraisal, and for your inspections. A lot of times it's finding out what is motivating the seller to move. Why are they selling? And then matching your offer to match what they're doing so that if it is a multiple offer situation, and even maybe your price isn't the highest, your offers is tailored to why they're moving, right? And what an example of that would be is if somebody's had one recently, they're selling their house at a Mission Viejo because they want to move to Idaho to be close to their kids, their grandkids, and they're bought a house in Idaho, but they need a couple weeks after closing on their house in order to effectively pack everything up and move and get into the other home. So the offer that we sent was we gave them 2 weeks. We said, okay, we're going to close in 30 days. Here's your price. Here's all our parameters, but we're going to give you 2 weeks in the house after we close so that you can pack your stuff up and not feel rushed and get to your kids, your grandkids, which is where you want to be. And this particular house had three offers. We were not the highest offer, and we got the house as an example. You can move to the next one. I think I just touched on this, just kind of both the slides. Again, just understanding what the seller wants. That's the most important thing. That's your agent's job to make those phone calls and figure that out on your behalf, and then to put talk with you on the offer and put together an offer that matches what you want and also what the seller wants. Another one, you could just continue. We kind of touched on this. Yeah, skipping the home inspection. So this doesn't happen a lot, but occasionally it does. The home inspection roughly will cost you about $400 to $500, maybe a little higher if the house has a pool and things like that. And it's probably the best $400 to $500 you can spend in this entire process. Because when you look at a house, you're able to see the countertops, you're able to see, the upgrades, the flooring, you're able to see the bathrooms, you're able to see the yard. But what you don't see is what's happening with the electrical and what's happening with the plumbing and how old's the roof? Is the roof leaking? Is the drainage around the property? It might look beautiful, but is the drainage draining properly? Is it draining back towards the house? And or the foundation? Is the house to code on electrical items like GFCIs, and the little push buttons in all the bathrooms and kitchen, which most homes are not GFCI, but this inspection gives you all of that information that you would need. And a home inspection, even on a great house, is going to be 30 pages. It's just going to have 30 pages of problems. Some of them are very minor, but nonetheless, they are a problem. And the most important thing for you when you buy a home is just know what you're buying, right? You just want to know exactly what you're buying so that you can make a determination if you want to move forward after receiving that inspection. And or maybe you want to negotiate with the seller on getting some concessions because there's some significant issues that need to be addressed. What would a significant issue be? Well, maybe you look at the house with your agent, or maybe through an open house. You want to make an offer. You make the offer. The inspector comes in. He does his deal, and the heater doesn't work. Right? It just doesn't work. It doesn't turn on. And this has happened multiple times. And the seller's like, I don't know, I haven't used the heater in a while. In California, you don't really need it. I haven't used it. But if you want to put a brand new heater in, you're going to have to get a coil, you're going to have to get a condenser, you're going to have to get a furnace, and all of those things is going to be about $12,000 to $14,000 to have that installed, right? And if you didn't have a home inspection tell you that, you wouldn't know that was an issue until you moved in, and then you're like, oh my god, I just dumped all my money in this thing, and now I got to pay 10, 12, 14,000 to fix this. So you want to know these things So you have an opportunity to either not buy the house or negotiate a concession with the seller. And then if they don't want to give you that concession, then you can cancel. You would have that right. So never skip this. And I have some great names of home inspectors that I could share with you if you need them. So pest report. So home inspection is one aspect, one inspection you do. A pest report is a combination of termites and dry rot on a house. And so I'm sure you guys are all aware of termites and dry rot. Dry rot is just wood that has become soft and it's starting to fail. And so there is an inspection specifically for that. The home inspector will touch on things like that. They'll say, hey, I see termites in certain areas, or you have dry rot over here, but the termite inspection is the expert. And these are fairly inexpensive. These are 95 to $100. And they're going to go in the attic. They're going to go all around the house. Um, if it is on a raised foundation, which would be a house that's typically built in the 50s or sooner, they're actually going to put on a suit and go under the house. And they're going to look for any kind of pests, termites, anything that's there. And then they're going to look at all the wood around the house and give you a report, kind of what you see on here with all these letters and numbers. And this is pretty typical of what you see. Every house, and unfortunately, every house in Southern California, if they don't have termites, they're going to have termites. You can fumigate a house with the big tent, and 3 months later, 4 months later, you could have termites burrowing into a new portion of your house. So why they include dry rot as a part of the pest inspection is that it's easier for a termite to eat and burrow into wet dry rot wood because it's soft than it is for them to go into hardwood protected with paint and all that. So they include all that in with the pest as a part of that. So section one is what you're looking at, and this is what you want to get the answers on and figure out how much it's going to cost, and then go to the seller and say, hey, look, you got $10,000 worth of damage here. I didn't know that was there. I need you to cover this. And if they don't want to cover it, then you can make a decision if you want to move forward on the property. And maybe they don't cover the whole amount, but maybe you can negotiate half of it. But home inspection, pest inspection, they are musts. Can't skip them. Desiree, you want to do
Okay.
this one? You got this?
Yeah,
All
I
right.
can do this one. Um, So mistake number three, not taking the condo document review period seriously. So if you're looking at a condo, there's quite a bit that goes into looking at a condo. Um, from a lender perspective, we actually have a phenomenal condo department, and we will go through everything about that HOA. So we're gonna look at their budget, we're gonna look at their reserves, we're gonna look at any repairs that are up and coming, so in case there are special assessments that might be happening. Special assessments are when they're going to raise your dues, like your HOA dues for something. So we look through that with a fine tooth comb to make sure that you're buying a property that you can feel comfortable about and that has a solid HOA, and that the HOA fees aren't going to dramatically increase over the next couple of years. And also just that it's a solid investment, and that you're not going to buy a place that at some point could potentially not have enough reserves to cover whatever repairs need to be done. California has something called SB 326. It's a newer law which requires all condos to be repaired, all balconies to be repaired. So it's a very good thing. Some of these buildings have been around for a very long time, and so it's a great thing. But we want to make sure that if they do have to repair certain things, balconies, sidewalks, stuff like that, that they have the money and a plan set up to do so. So we do all of that for you. You do get a copy of all of this, but we really do our due diligence to make sure that you're buying something that's sound and you're not going to have an issue. Another thing, it gives an example. You learn that it doesn't allow pets, or it doesn't allow certain kinds of pets, right? We all hear about like certain size of dogs, not being allowed in certain places, stuff like that. So sometimes the listing will say that pets are allowed, there are no issues, and then we find out when we're digging in the HOA that that's not the case, or only dogs of, a certain size or something like that. So we want to know all of that up front so that you aren't getting into a situation that's going to cause you a problem. preparing for closing day. So I send out the closing disclosure. Steve does the final walkthrough with you. We're usually ahead of things, so the closing disclosure goes out a few days early. You guys do the walkthrough typically. What once any repairs have been done, we prepare the documents. You usually sign with a mobile notary. You can go to title or you sign with mobile notary at your current home, and then you celebrate obviously with your new home. That's simplifying it, but just to kind of give you an idea how the ending goes. So mortgage basics. This is my wheelhouse most definitely. So there are all different types of mortgages. There's fixed rate mortgages. There's also adjustable rate mortgages, which we're not really going to touch on today. But there are also down payment assistance programs. So there's CalHFA, which CalHFA has other programs, but that's also who runs the Dream for All. So we'll go into that a little bit further. There's something called My Home. There's something called Golden State Funding Authority. We have a Smart Saver, and we also have something called a Supreme Dream. So each one has a little bit different requirements, and I guarantee if you don't qualify for one, you're probably going to qualify for another. And a lot of times you might qualify for all of them or a few of them. And at that point, then we would compare them to see what makes the most sense for you. Then there's your typical FHA loan. There are VA loans if you served in the military. And, key terms to know with a mortgage is principal and interest. You have your interest rate, and a portion of your payment goes to principal every month and a portion goes to interest. You have your down payment, which is kind of obvious, but that's the amount that you're putting down out of your own pocket or through some sort of a grant that you got. Loan to value is the amount that you're borrowing divided by whatever the value is or the purchase price. And then private mortgage insurance, I would guess most people have heard about PMI. So PMI, if you don't put 20% down, you're going to pay PMI unless you have a VA loan. Smart Saver, sometimes you don't have mortgage insurance. There are nuances to certain products, but just as a general rule, you're going to pay PMI, and it's going to be based on the kind of loan that you're doing and how much you're putting down and what your credit score is. Mistake number 4, not getting pre-approved first. So I get a lot of clients that come to me after they fall in love with the house. And although that's great, sometimes they're a little surprised to find that the payment didn't look like what they thought, the down payment didn't look like what they thought, or maybe they just couldn't buy that price. So I always recommend to get pre-approved first. As I mentioned, I do a soft credit check, so there's no reason to worry about your credit. And it allows you to figure out what you're approved for and all your options, but also sometimes what you're approved for and what you're comfortable paying are not the same thing. And it's really important, as I'm sure you guys would agree, to have a mortgage payment that you feel comfortable paying. Nobody wants to be house poor. So you want to talk with a lender and you go over all of that. And you want to prepare for your credit. So I have a handy dandy little tool called a Rapid Rescore Simulator. So if somebody's credit isn't ideal or where we want it to be for the program that we're doing, then I can actually run a simulator to tell you exactly what to do to get your score up. So let's say you're just getting started in the process and you want to see what you qualify for, and we pull your credit and it's not exactly where you want it to be, then I can put you on a plan to get your score exactly where we need it to be. So it's never a no, you can't buy. It's just maybe sometimes not right now, or let's work on this first. And some people would be surprised to know that most loan programs will go down to a 580 in some cases. Not all, but we do have options for a 580 credit score. What's in a mortgage payment? So I did talk a little bit about principal and interest. Principal is the amount of the money that you're paying, that you borrowed, that you're paying every month that's going towards the principal, paying down how much you owe. Interest is the interest that you're paying. We talked about rates being in the sixes, low sixes right now. So that's the interest that you're paying every month. Taxes are your property taxes. That's going to be based on the neighborhood that you're buying in. And we will figure out exactly what that rate is. Um, on average in Southern California, it's 1.25% of the price or less. A lot of times in Orange County, it's a little bit less. Homeowners insurance. So you're going to shop for a homeowners insurance quote. If you rent and you have mortgage insurance, it's similar to that, but it's going to be for owning versus renting. And then HOA. HOA is if you live in a condo or a townhome, or sometimes even like a what's called a PUD. It's a planned unit development, and sometimes they'll have an HOA. And I apologize that I'm losing my voice. Um, I've been losing it all day. So mistake number 5, not checking which programs you qualify for. Excuse me. So if you're a veteran, we talked briefly on the fact that you can do a VA loan. If you're a doctor, a nurse, a teacher, a firefighter, police officer, EMT, there are also programs available where you can get discounts on closing costs and different special programs. So it's always worth looking at all of those as well to see if they might help benefit or even add to what you're already approved for. Now, of course, if you're a veteran, you have no down payment requirement, you have no mortgage insurance, and depending on if you have any disability ranking, then you also have either no funding fee or a minimal funding fee. So there are a lot of options for veterans, and I love that loan for the people that can qualify. There's also something that you may have not heard of. It's called a buy down. A lot of times it's called a 3-2-1 buy down or a 2-1 buy down. And what it does is it allows you to, it's a strategy for people who want to buy now, but they're kind of hoping the rates are they're waiting for the rates to go down, but they want to buy now. So you can actually get a credit from the seller when you negotiate that offer up front that will give you a credit to buy the rate down temporarily. So I'll give you an example. If you, let's say the rate's 6% and we did a 2-1 buy down, then that would mean for the first 12 months of the mortgage, you're going to get a 4%. Then the second 12 months of that mortgage, you're going to get a 5%. And the third year, you're going to go to the 6% that it would be today. So, and then it's going to be 6% going forward. What's great about that program is it allows you time to wait for rates to drop because you can refi at any time, even though you have that. If you refi early and there's still money from that seller credit, then it actually just goes to pay your balance down. So you don't lose anything, but it also allows, sometimes people know, in their job, they're going to be making more in a couple of years. So it allows you to kind of graduate your payment up as your income increases. So it's a great product. Whenever people can do it, I highly recommend it. And I would say at least half of the loans I do right now have some form of a buy down. You can do a 1-year buy down. You can do a 3-2-1 buy down. You can do a 1-in-1 where you do this, like let's say it was 6%, you get 5% for 2 years. There are a lot of different ways to structure it depending on how much credit we can get from the seller. So California down payment assistance. So we won't go into too much depth on these, but I'll just kind of give you guys the overhead view. So CalHFA, they'll give you up to 6%. Golden State will give you up to 5.5%. Supreme Dream, they'll go down to a 600 credit score, and they'll give you up to 5%. Shinoa also goes down to a 600, gives you 5%. And then we have a Smart Saver that has no mortgage insurance, and you can get a down payment of 3%. That says no, or I'm sorry, yeah, down payment. So down payment of 3%. They also have some interesting things where if you're in specific census tracts, like if you're looking in certain neighborhoods, then I can look up front to see if you automatically qualify for that program. So depending on where you're looking, we will always strategically look to see what's going to work for you. And some of these have to be paid back, and some of them don't. They're forgiven completely. I also have something special for my buyers. So if you're a first time buyer, I have two courses that we created that you go through. They're online courses. They're meant to be informational. They're not super long. They're just really meant to prepare you for home ownership and all the things that you may not think about. We want to make sure you know about it so that you go into it really prepared, and you've got some money set aside for potential repairs and things like that. So we will actually give you up to $1,000, so $500 for each course, and all you have to do is go through the course and it automatically gives you a certificate and I get notified, and then whenever you buy you get that $1,000 towards your closing costs. California Dream for All. So that's the one that is really big right now. It actually just opened up the portal 2 days ago. So that means as of 2 days ago, people can actually apply, and it will be open until March 14th, I believe. We'll double check that date in a second. So basically, they're sharing the growth. It's not a bill. So this isn't just another loan, it's a partnership with the state of California to help you skip the down payment hurdle and potentially buy a house that is higher priced than you would have been able to buy if you had to come up with all your own down payment. So imagine entering the market with 20% equity on day one and it not being your money. So affordability, if you live in California, you know affordability is the biggest issue as rates have been higher. Inventory, as Steve talked about, is tight. So the state of California through CAHFA will give you 20% down payment assistance of the lower of the appraised value or sales price. Meaning if you go into contract for 600,000 and it appraises for 580, then we're going to use 580 for that calculation, not 600,000. But you would also probably go back to the seller and negotiate the price from 600 to 580. And this is an appreciation share program. So they're going to recapture the down payment that they gave you at some point in the future, plus a percentage of the appreciation. The last line I think is important. California is still bullish on real estate. What does that mean? It means that they still believe that buying in California is a smart thing. California would not be giving out 20% to thousands of people if they thought we were going to experience a big crash or decrease in value. So what do you want to know about this program? You want to focus on getting pre-approved. Like I said, it already opened. So if you're interested, we should start working on getting you pre-approved as soon as possible so that you're not in that last minute rush. And I said 14th, it's March 16th. So just opened, it'll be open until March 16th, but you don't want to do it all the way down to the last day just in case you're missing something. You want to make sure you've got it all in. So it's a lottery. That means they're going to pick people at random. But the last 2 years they did this, they pick a lot of people and they draw multiple times. And they also, if they draw you and you don't find something, they will give you an extension. They'll give you a period of time, but then they'll give you an extension. But then some people who get drawn don't end up finding a home. So then they'll draw new people later on. So it's 20% or 150,000, whichever is less. So if you were going to put 5% of your own funds, which is the max they'll allow, then you could get up to a price of 1,150,000. And that would be with them giving you the 20% and seller giving you up to 6% in credits for closing costs. So it's for first-time home buyers only. There are other programs that I mentioned before that will allow people who are not a first-time home buyer. So if you aren't a first-time home buyer, that doesn't mean you can't get something. And you can carve, like I said, up to 5%, well, 5% of your own money, but you can also use 5% of the 20% they give you towards closing costs. So if you didn't have any money to get into a home, you could still buy a home with this program.
Hey, Desiree. So just to clarify, I think it was on one of the slides, but the California Dream has no payment at all.
Right.
So when you take this 20% cash, you're not paying anything at any time. The only time that you pay anything back to the state is when you sell the home. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So when you
Sell,
sell the
and
home,
you're allowed
and
to refi one time. So you're allowed
yeah,
one refi where they don't take anything back. If you refied again, then it would be due. So like if later on rates drop and you refi, refi once when rates drop, and then rates drop a lot in the future, but you've gained a lot of equity, then they would take that money that they gave you back at that time.
yeah. So my perspective, this is probably like one of the best programs you could possibly have, if you qualify with it, because the state is going to come in with you in a revenue share by giving you all the money of which you don't have to pay anything during the time that you have it. And 15 years later, when you sell, is when you'll give them a piece of their revenue. It's just a can't miss thing. If you
Right.
qualify, you just got to do it. And I know that um, last year we had somebody on this, and it was somebody that wasn't initially drawn, and it came very late in the process, and then out of nowhere she got the draw, and we got her in a place, and it was pretty exciting because I think for the most part she had given up, and,
Yeah.
and it landed right on her lap, and we were able to close on something pretty quick.
And she would not have been able to buy had she not gotten this.
No,
So
no chance.
it was a pretty amazing story. When it was for her family, it was a really great story. So, are you a first generation home buyer? This is the biggest requirement that I think eliminates some people. So at least one borrower. So if you're married or your partner is a first generation home buyer, but you're not, meaning your parents owned a home at some point, then that's okay. If you're single and you're the only one on the loan, then your parents could not have ever owned a home in the United States. So they're trying to give this as an opportunity for first generation buyers to own in California. So with that being said, for a first generation home buyer is defined as a buyer who has not been on title, held in ownership, or have been named on a mortgage to a home permanent in the United States in the last 7 years. So if you owned a home, let's say you owned a home and it's been a rental, you bought a house in another state and then you now live in California and it's been a rental for the last 6 years and you haven't lived in it, then you could be a first time home buyer, but your parents could not have owned, to the best of your knowledge. If you're adopted and you don't know, it's obviously to the best of your knowledge.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah,
How would they even find out?
California.
I'm not suggesting mortgage fraud. I'm just saying, you know, if somebody owned a home in 1975, what they can find out that information.
Well, I don't know how they find it out, but they do ask for birth certificate as, one of the things. They ask for your parents' name, where they were born. They ask some pretty detailed questions to try to find it. I suppose it's possible they could not, but they do definitely try to make sure that what you're giving them is accurate.
Fair enough.
So we just talked about first-time buyer, defined as someone who has not owned and occupied their home in the last 3 years, and who has not lived in a home owned by a spouse in the past 3 years. If any of these things happen in the last 3 years, um, or if any of this happened more than 3 years ago, or you have never owned a home, you can apply for the benefits of CalHFA's first-time buyer program. Exceptions may apply. And like I said, there are programs, if you aren't a first-time buyer, there are other programs we could still look at. Other requirements. So for Orange County, the max income limit that you can have is 216,000, which I think is pretty good. And that's combined income. So if you're married, that's you and your spouse. And that's something that I will look at up front. And you can see Orange County's 216, LA County's 168, San Diego's 207, Riverside 164. So depending on the county that you're buying in, and it's not the county you live in, it's the county that you're going to buy in. So if you live in Riverside, but you want to buy in Huntington Beach, then we're going to use Orange County's limit.
Is the is a single person the same valuation as a couple?
Yes, it's total household income. But if you, let's say your mother lives with you, but she's not going to be on the loan, then we would not count her income. Just whoever's going to be on the mortgage. Additional criteria. You must occupy it as a primary resident. There can be no occupant co-borrowers, meaning if you're, for some reason, you don't qualify quite where you need to be and your dad wants to co-sign for you, that won't work. Not for this program. It'll work for almost every other program, just not this one. All people on title have to be on the loan. So if you have, in the case of your mother lives with you and we're not putting her on the loan, then she cannot be on title either. Um, it follows Fannie Mae's guidelines for U.S. citizenship. So you can be a U.S. citizen, a permanent resident, a non-permanent resident. You're required to take 2 courses uh, online. They're Dream for All courses. They're informative again, so you don't have to do those to apply. You'll just have to have done them before you actually close. It can be a single family home, a condo, a townhome, a manufactured home. It cannot be a multi-unit, so no duplexes, triplexes, anything like that. And that 2-1 buy down that I talked about, where you can get a lower rate for the first couple years, you can do that with this program. And you can still get credits from the seller. So you could get 20% from the state, and you could still get like 6% from the seller, which is pretty amazing. And you do have to have a home warranty unless it's new construction. So let's talk about the appreciation share. So you have the original 20% that they give you for the down payment. If you're a regular income, so there's going to be 2 different income categories. There's low income, um, which is 80% below the AMI for Fannie Mae. We would go over that together. But if you're regular income and you're above that, but you're under that 216 figure if you're in Orange County, then they take the 20% that you got, whatever amount they gave you for the down, plus 20% of the appreciation. And I'll show you a calculator so you can kind of see how that looks. Now, it is capped. So if you just obtained so much equity, you bought, a house that just really grew in value, it's capped at 2.5 times the amount of the second lien for appreciation. So I don't think you'd ever get that high anyways, but there is a cap just so you know that that's there. So here's an example. So let's say you buy a house for 500,000 and they give you 20%. So at 20% of 500,000 is going to be $100,000. That's how much you would get for your down payment. And at the time of the sale, let's say the new value is 700,000. So then you would have an appreciation, right, of 200,000. That's how much you've gained in equity. So 20% of that 200,000 is 40,000. So you would owe them the original 100,000 that they gave you for the down, plus an additional 40,000 for the appreciation. But so you owe 140,000. The rest of the equity is yours to keep. And I've seen people question this, is that a good deal? I mean, like Steve said, you could be in this house for 30 years and eventually, they collect on their appreciation, or you could do this, earlier if you refinance the second time earlier. But regardless, you're getting into a home that you potentially maybe wouldn't have gotten into otherwise, and you're not paying any interest on the money that they gave you. Like you don't have a monthly payment due. I hope that
Yeah,
makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah. They're giving you essentially giving you the money with no payment. You're going to walk away with $60,000 in gain, right? If my math is right, and
Yeah.
that 60,000 didn't cost you anything. That is a smoking deal.
Now, I mentioned if you are below the AMI for Fannie Mae, then let's say we had a original price of 400,000. 20%, you'd get $80,000 for your down payment. At the time of the sale, same example, you've gained 200,000. So 20%, you would actually get that 40,000, but they only take three-quarters of that. So they take a quarter off of it. So you actually only have to pay 30,000 back. So you'd have to pay the original 80 plus 30, you would owe 110. So it's a little less. Like if your income is lower, they take less from you in the appreciation. And this is based on the income when you qualify and purchase the home.
You have a completely different job making three times the money. They're going to base it on the first job you had when you applied,
Exactly.
which is
Exactly.
even better.
Yes. So, dream for all process. So it's pretty simple. You get pre-qualified with me. We get your completed Dream for All approval letter. It's a special letter that I would get ready for you. And then you would gather your documents that are needed for registration, and you would register for the portal sometime between the 24th and the 16th, and you upload your documents. So you do that part. I will get you ready for it. And then you complete the online registration, and then we wait for you to get drawn. You could start looking at homes at that time because, like I said, even if you don't get drawn for this, we can have a backup plan waiting for you, and maybe it'll work out that you get a different program. And that's it. So, this QR code on the left is for me because we did recommend that we start with a pre-qualification. So, if you're interested and you'd like to chat further, you can book on my calendar. All you got to do is click on that. So you can book an appointment. We can chat about that. Any questions you have, but I would love to help you get pre-qualified so that you can at least, put your name in the hat. And then if you guys have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat now because we'd love to answer them for you. And my information and Steve's information is on there to the right. If you notice, obviously our emails are there, our websites, but we both have our cell phones on there. So you can actually call us or text us anytime. We are completely available and we want to help you and we want to answer your questions and we want to make this work for you. You're welcome, Alexis. Does anyone have any questions? Steve, did you want to add anything?
No questions?
Doesn't look like it.
No, okay. Well, it means you just did such a great job explaining everything. Yeah, no, I just appreciate everybody attending. Hopefully, you found this information informative. And again, if you have any questions about the market, where I see prices going, anything about buying real estate, please reach out to me. You can text, you can email me. I usually respond 7 days a week, and I very rarely sleep. So,
Uh, Tyson, you asked a question. Are you the only lender that can do this? Very good question. No, I'm not the only lender, but I will tell you that we are a preferred lender through CalHFA, and we do a lot of business through them, and we're very well versed in it. But no, I'm not the only lender. But I would recommend if you're, considering me versus someone else, definitely speak to both of us and see what kind of information you get. You can also look us up, look at my reviews, compare reviews, stuff like that. But no, we are not the only lender. We're just a preferred. You're welcome. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you all for joining. I would really appreciate you spending your Thursday evening with us. And I would love to chat with you personally. I know Steve would as well. So feel free to book an appointment or reach out directly and have a wonderful evening.
all right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.